Hello there, here we are back for another installment of the DSP project. This time we'll be talking about syncopation in drum programming and a bit of rhythm tension and release. If we just work with, say, 2 bars using just the bass drum and the snare drum, I'm just going to solo these and we'll have a pretty standard pattern there. It goes syncopation by definition is meant to be a rhythm which has unexpected notes accented. So maybe the notes that we're not used to hearing accented are the ones which are accented. Then again, if you're used to certain skippy notes, then one would doubt what an unexpected accent is, or say notes that just aren't common. Now in this groove here, what I've done is I've added a kick to the end of the groove, the one that I'm muting right now. I'm just going to mute that and also mute the second kick on beat 2, and I'm going to go back to a very standard pattern. Now if I want to add a little bit of life to that, I'm going to unmute these 2 notes again. And that already starts to move a little bit more. I'm going to just bring in the hi-hat, which has got a very standard pattern at the moment. Now, we could just mute every other hat and see what happens, thereby giving the groove a slightly stronger quarter note feel. Now, if we'd like to maybe retain the movement, we can unmute a few of those and just maybe try and create a slightly unexpected hi-hat pattern. Nothing hugely complicated, but just maybe not what you listen to on every record. So what I've done there is I've left the hi-hat, which comes in right after the snare drum, so on the end of the 2, I've left that empty. Let me just go back to the rhythm and tension thing. What I'm doing by adding a few hats or taking a few away is I'm increasing the amount of tension, thereby strengthening the amount of release needed. If we just go back to the very straightforward 1, 2, 3, 4 pattern, where we have a bass drum on the 1 and 3 and a snare drum on the 2 and 4, beats 1 and 3, where the bass drum plays, are essentially the ones where the tension is created. Beats 2 and 4 is where the release comes in through the snare drum. So tension, release, tension, release. Now, if I just mute this snare drum here, let's see what we get. So through muting the snare drum on the 2, that you can almost tell how the second snare that comes in there, well, which is the first now since the other one's been muted, causes almost a sort of pleasurable amount of release, right? Now if I bring these back in, we go back to the normal stuff. Let's make it a little bit funkier. I'm going to bring the hi-hats back in as well. Just added another bass drum note there, just to add a little bit more of syncopation. And now I'm going to bring in some snare drums. Just a different type of snare drum which we're going to use for ghost notes. Ghost notes are notes which are generally played on the snare drum. Sometimes we can find them on other instruments, on other voices of the drums rather, but the main reason why we call them ghost notes is because you can barely hear them, or you should in theory barely be able to hear them. That's how they work best. Essentially, I think initially drummers started using it to give the hi-hat pattern a sort of tambourine-like effect. So by playing the snare drum at a volume which was atypical or just unexpected, they would achieve a tambourine type effect. Now, if we bring all of these back in, this is a lot more groovy than what we had in the beginning. It's also up to you which voices you want, louder or quieter. I've got a tendency to keep the hats quite low in the mix because we can hear them pretty well most of the time anyway. Now I've got something else for you here, which is I've got a pattern played by a triangle going on above this, which is what's been called the universal rhythm. Essentially these days it's very much present in Cuban music, or kind of always has been. We could say that it's the cornerstone of Cuban music, and it's the clave. I've written it over one bar here, and I'm sure when you hear it you'll recognize it, because there is a little bit of this rhythm in every single groove. I've literally, as a drummer, been observing rhythms for many years, and if it isn't the whole clave, there will be some small parts of the clave in music from almost anywhere in the world, which is why I guess the term universal beat applies. But within the clave, there's a two-part here and a two-part here and a three-part there. The three-part is meant to be where the tension is built, and the two-part is where it kind of releases. Have a listen. So tension, release, tension, release. Now the clave can sometimes be used in its opposite order. So if we split it into two parts, the two-part and the three-part, sometimes we get the three-part coming in first, which would give us this sort of sound. So one release, tension, release. This is literally what's underneath most Cuban music, and it's imperative for anyone trying to play Cuban music to develop a relationship with a clave. This is also what those two wooden sticks, mistakenly called claves, get their name from. It's clave. Now, let's see what the clave can do for our pattern if we play all of it together. It just adds a little extra something. I've got another small surprise here for you, which is a shaker pattern. And if we just listen to the shaker pattern, which is muted for the first bar and it appears in the second and fourth. So what I've tried to do there is give you an example of question and answer between the triangle and the shaker. This is what it sounds like. So both of these patterns contain tension and release, obviously, but the fact that they're fairly different and coming in on different bars one after the other creates yet another dimension of tension and release, to the point where we could almost mute the ghost notes I put in here. And if we listen to the whole groove minus the ghost notes, you'll see that just by having added this, we can kind of, we've almost got enough movement here. Now, if I just take the mute off, right, a little bit more movement there. So much about syncopation for now. We'll talk about it another time in more depth, no doubt. Keep bringing your questions to the table, post them on the site, and we shall have more answers for you soon.